Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat, and here I'm today talking about the some of the not so good things to happen in Toonami in 2024. This is my top 5 worst moments of Toonami in 2024 list. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The number 5 worst thing to happen in Toonami in 2024, in my personal, humble, and very furry opinion, are the ratings to Lycoris Recoil. If you recall my lists from last year, Lycoris Recoil was my second best thing about Toonami 2023 because it was announced late in the year. I'm like, I love that Lycoris Recoil. I'm gonna put that out there. I love Lycoris Recoil. I think it's an incredible show, and I'm a little baffled at the fact that it rated very poorly on the block. Now, if you watch my best of Toonami 2024 video turned into a tongue twister, you'll know that some of the things I rated high in that list were just shows that rated pretty well. And Lycoris Recoil didn't do that. And I'm a little baffled. It was one of the biggest anime summer 2024, if not the biggest anime, definitely new property air in summer 2024, or 2022, I mean, rather. It has a lot of things going for it, but people just simply do not show up on Toonami. And I posited in some of the videos talking about it earlier in the year about my theories why, and that's best reserved for those videos, or else I'll go into like a 20-minute tangent about why I think Chisato is incredibly cute, basically. But I digress. People just simply do not show up to watch it on Toonami, you know. And sometimes I call them, and sometimes I call them terribly. I called it terribly in that case because I said last year it was going to be an incredible rated show and all that, but whatever. So, the number 4. What is the number 4 worst thing to happen in Toonami 2024? This is more of an omnibus pick, and that is just the sheer amount of reruns added to the block. I swear, at least in the second half of the year, it seemed that every time we got a new schedule, some rerun gets thrown on the block. Like, for example, we've had Rick and Morty the anime, like, on and off at the end of the block for, like, 5 months now. It feels like for, like, 5 or 6 months. No one likes that show. I don't think that show has a fan base. The Rick and Morty fan base does not like Rick and Morty the anime. And that's saying a lot. We've had, for example, Dragon Ball Z Kai on and off at, like, 3 AM for half of this year. And then you get something like, One Piece. A lot of people like One Piece, so I'll give them their flowers there, but it's a lot of people have already seen those episodes on streaming, even though if they're technically new to television. And ultimately, and right now, Blue Exorcist. If you watch my best of video, I put that on the best of list for thinking outside the box, but at the same time, as fun it is to be creative and to try to make the best of a bad situation, it's still the best of a bad situation. And the fact that something like Blue Exorcist has to be on the block in the first place is kind of a bad sign. And again, and I know I pretty much put that to like 2 or 3 of my other videos for like worst of moments, but again, it's something that is gonna be around probably since again, I'm gonna talk about the budget a little more when I get a little deeper into this video, wink wink, but you know, you gotta ball on a budget. And sometimes when you ball on a budget, the budget balls you. So what's the number 3 worst moment of Toonami 2024? It was something that just happened like a few days ago as we making this, and that is the end of Toonami Rewind. So Toonami Rewind, basically the Friday checkered pass block from 5 to 7 p.m. went to Toonami, went to anime headed by Tom. So we got Sailor Moon, we got Dragon Ball Z Kai, we got Naruto, the original one from the late 2000s. And yeah, and there was some controversies about it, minor ones, like for example, the specific dub that was used for Sailor Moon. There was some controversy about that. There was controversy because they skipped an entire arc of Naruto. And a lot of people believe that the ratings definitely dropped off after that move. And yeah, I mean, and Checkered passed. Thing is, it's very hard to get ratings already for premieres, especially on cable, which is part of the reason why I stopped making the Toonami ratings videos, because those numbers are not very easy to come by, and when they come by, it's weeks later. Like, for example, I used to be able to pump those videos out on, like, Tuesdays, like, 3 days. people remember the episodes that air 3 days earlier, and they could be like, "Oh, it'll be interesting that, oh, people watched that or people didn't watch that." But again, if it's like 3 weeks later, it's like, "Hey, remember when this happened in this show 3 weeks ago?" People aren't gonna have that much of a memory about that. And at the end of the day, you know, yeah, you can't really make videos based on that. But again, and I could go into that, but again, Checkered Past, a lot of people said that the ratings are doing pretty well for the main Checkered Past shows, but not so much for the anime, which is why Checkered Past is getting the Friday slot back from Toonami. And again, it's kind of a bad sign to Warner Bros. Discovery. They kind of I'm not I'm gonna have to phrase it this way. They extended a little bit of an olive branch because of something that well happened beforehand, but may be related to what's actually number one on this list for the worst of list. But like, okay, we'll give you this shot. We'll throw you Friday. We'll throw you a little bit of a bone. We'll give you the Friday checker pass slot. Do your best. And well, 2025, it's not gonna be back, so take that as you will about how Warner Bros. Discovery sees how things are going with Toonami. So the number two worst thing to happen in Toonami, and Toonami in 2024 is the show I think was the absolute worst show to be on Toonami in 2024, and that is Rick and Morty the anime. So I reviewed the opening episode of Rick and Morty the anime, and my general thoughts are in that video, but I'll summarize them below. First half looked the first kind of promising that things were gonna be kind of interesting, and then it just turned into Citizen Kane, but for Reddit. That's the best way to put it. It becomes really just a chore to watch. Again, and there's always this like view of Rick and Morty that the show and its fan base goes up their own asses, and the anime did not do anything to stop that. In fact, it was incredibly pretentious. And a lot of people also point out that I didn't keep watching it, but people who kept watching said, oh, there's a lot of like unironic plot holes, even though the show is based on, oh, you go to dimension to dimension, which should make it easy to avoid that. But I mean, people who are much more studious than I said the show is an absolute mess. And it never rated well. And I actually look periodically at like Anime Corner, and they do like their weekly and end of season rankings for like all the anime that aired that season. And I looked at that for the end of the fall, I believe, or end of the summer season in 2024. Of the 65 anime listed, they all like the fan vote, again, non scientific, but the fan vote had it 58 out of 65. I'm going to let that sink in right there because I'm going to talk about Anime Corner a little bit when I talk about the number one worst thing to happen to Tommy 24, but you do not want to be towards the bottom of that list, you know. Like you're going below like the seasonal throwaway isekai, but that's just how things are. So with number two out of the way, I'm gonna cover the one honorable mention for this list. And if you watch my best of video, you'll know I said that there really weren't that much news, good or bad, to happen this year. But there was exactly one honorable mention, the worst of list, and I'm gonna put that as Zom 100, a show that kind of slipped under the radar when it got by the time it was announced on Toonami. It was put on Toonami, and much like Lycoris Recoil, no one watched it. And perhaps the reason why it's an honorable mention, not ranked over, say, like Lycoris Recoil, might be personal bias because Zom 100's okay, and I personally love Lycoris Recoil. You know? And at the same time, I was probably personally a little more disappointed at Lycoris Recoil's ratings, even though they kind of had roughly the same numbers that Zom 100 would do a little later in the year. But Zom 100 was put high up in the block in the schedule, and it never pulled in viewership. And that's really it. Just airs one season, it's gone. And I think a lot of people, including some of you watching this, forgot it was ever on Toonami, much less in this year. So, what was the number one worst thing to happen in Toonami in 2024? If you were watching Toonami, if you're even on the internet in October, you will know that the worst thing to happen in Toonami this year was the absolute debacle that was Uzumaki. Not much needs to be said, but I'm going to go into some detail about this stuff. Okay, Uzumaki. late September, first episode airs. It's amazing. It's like a 9.5. It's like a 10 out of 10. It's absolutely incredible. I loved it. Everyone else loved it. People were hype. And again, Anime Corner. Anime Corner historically does not rate Toonami shows high. They kind of scoff at a little bit. Uzumaki was like the number 5 rated show after like the first week. Like, it was hanging in there with something like Dan to Dan, which became like the absolute smash hit anime of all of 2024 right at the end. So it was hanging in there with shows like that after like week 1. So everyone's hype. It's beautifully animated. There's 3 episodes left. People are like, oh, it was actually worth the wait. It looks incredible. Episode 2 happens, and shit starts to hit the fan. Animation quality, notably worse. Voice acting quality, notably drops, especially with dub. And everyone's pointing fingers. And allegedly, what happened was that they had to change to a different. Unallegedly, we actually know this was 100% true. This part, a different studio animated the rest of Uzumaki. Animation quality is notably poor. And a lot of people start asking questions. And the best insight we actually got from it was from Jason DeMarco, who said basically, we were in a corner. I'm paraphrasing this here, obviously. We were put in a corner. It was either air one episode and have everyone wonder why it was just one episode, or just push through and hope that we can get through the shit sandwich all in one piece. They chose the latter, which might actually have been the right call, to be honest. But at the same time, it's well, I guess only having one episode raises a lot of questions, but this one also raises a lot of questions too. Oh yeah. And the whole thing where it was alleged by Jason DeMarco that, yeah, we were basically told by unseen forces to save money, so the original studio had to go bye-bye, and someone who would pick up the project for cheap had to finish the rest of the episode. So I guess they're complaining that the original animators were watching Boy Meets World or something. I guess, who knows, or whatever. But at the end of the day, you get poor quality episodes visually, and everyone's asking these questions because, again, we've been talking about the show for 5 years now. I'm looking at like I said, I could scroll up and look at my best and worst of list of last year. My number one worst of thing was just wondering what was going on with Uzumaki. We didn't get Uzumaki last 2-3 years. Definitely, everyone was wondering what it was. First year, you're like, oh, it was the coof. It was COVID. Everyone had to work from home. That delayed everything. Everyone can pass that. Then then you got maybe another year. In 2021, the guy I think who was the director for like the first episode said, "Yeah, it's harder to animate this than we anticipated." And he was being very polite, but basically saying like, "Hey, this project is going to take a little more time than we expected. But we're doing this because we want to make it for our own pride and for your entertainment. We want to make this as good as possible." Fine. 2022, very little information comes out. 2023, very little information comes out, and people are panicking. 2024, they're like, okay, we got it. Here's an actual trailer. It's coming out late September. It drops on Toonami. People are psyched. And again, first episode, incredible, amazing quality. Which makes the next 3 episodes just really a tragedy, you know. And yeah, I mean, it's the fact that a lot of people spent 5 years, waited for 5 years for this. They were psyched even since the first announcement, and they were psyched for this, and they got what was, at the end of the day, a mediocre product. And honestly, if I was talking about the best worst of anime moments, period, not just Toonami in 2024, Uzumaki could very easily be number one in that as well. And that's just something that's very unfortunate. And I talked about how the general anime population viewed it. I mentioned Anime Corner, the vote for Anime Corner, week 1, it was number 5. By the end of its run, it was not even in the top 40 anymore, out of like 50 something anime. And again, you got a lot. Like I said, this past fall has actually been a pretty great season for anime. And I already mentioned in the last bit, Dan to Dan, which has become one of my personal favorite anime, was incredible. And the fact that it was a Netflix thing kind of makes you kick yourself a bit because that means, well, if you're open to Netflix, then we probably were not too far off theoretically from Dan to Dan being a Toonami. Perhaps it's a stretch. Toonami, Warner Bros. Discovery is not going to throw the amount of money that Netflix is going to throw at anything, especially since Netflix has gotten a lot more aggressive with regards to anime. For example, if you remember, was it like a year or two or a few years back now that Stone Ocean was on Netflix, and that was seen as game changing at the time. And a lot of people really hated the release schedule because they just did the old fashioned drop half the season, wait 6 months for everyone to forget about the show, drop the second half, and no one cares about the second half anymore. And that's just how things are, unfortunately. But again, worst of moments. Uzumaki takes the very, very spirally cake. What are you guys' thoughts? What did you think was the worst moments in Toonami 2024? Leave your comments, leave opinions down below. I am Super Orange Cat, and that is all.